There it is, you can see the Corinthian capital. On top of that monolithic granite column, one of 16. That's supporting the portico, which is in a rectangular shape, and then transfixed to the rotunda behind. Look at this reveal. Look at this reveal, friends, of the Pantheon coming out of this side street. The church of Santa Maria ad Martyres. Look at that. Look at that.
I always wonder if you clean. This is where we ate our sandwich.
I'm here. They're all here.
Sorry, you. Oh, there you are. I'm just going to go and check out what the ticket situation is if you want to start.
Okay, everybody come here.
We should go to the fountain. Yeah.
It's the fountain of the obelisk.
Oh, the star's pretty cool.
Yes, it's across the top. Okay. Gather around, everyone. Down here, please. Down here. Down here, if you can, because I'll stand up so you can get a good... No? Okay, all right, that's fine. Thanks. Ask it to record. Can you see? If it goes dark, just... Yeah. Okay. All right. This is one of the most famous buildings, not only in Rome, but in the whole world, the Pantheon, named after all the gods. Looking right through it now, you're cutting through about 700 years of development from the portico, which is colonnaded with 16 granite columns topped with Corinthian capitals. You see and notice the floral designs on the capitals. And do you see at the very end of the wall there an icon of the Mother of God? So that's a 700-year development just on your line of sight. Okay, the Pantheon, not necessarily this structure, a smaller one dedicated to all the gods of the Greco-Roman Pantheon, because Greek and Roman gods are equivalent, was constructed in about 25 to 27 BC by Marcus Agrippa, the general of the Emperor Augustus. The Emperor Augustus was the emperor that we saw, was responsible for instituting the divine ruler cult in relation to his person, that he is a god on earth and to be worshipped as such. All subsequent emperors took on the title Augustus. It wasn't this building though. This building was constructed about 150 years later by another divinely, let's say, inspired and embodiment of the gods kind of emperor, not from a Christian point of view, from a pagan point of view, named Hadrian. Okay, the Emperor Hadrian built the Pantheon as you see it today. He also was responsible for the mausoleum named after him, which is now known as the Castle St. Angelo, which you'll also visit hopefully in your own time if you have a chance. It's not part of our program. So when this was constructed, you have the best kind of engineering, which is executed and reflected in some of the only engineering texts that we have from antiquity, like Vitruvius's geometry. It's 16 granite columns shipped over, monolithic. So you see, they're not cut. They were shipped over like that from Egypt in the early 2nd century. Like that. They weigh in the number of tons. I cannot tell you how many right now. They're in the number of tons. This is the portico holding up a massive architrave, which says, and this could mean that the facade dates from Marcus Agrippa's time, that Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, erected this in the 3rd year of his consulate. That's the abbreviation of the Latin right there. A consul is someone who represents or is appointed by the Senate as a leader of the Roman people for a period of time. Of course, under Augustus, that didn't mean much, actually, because he was in charge, okay? So that dates from Augustus' time, but then the Rotunda is definitely Hadrian's, okay? Comes from about 100 years later. You cannot see the Rotunda behind this. It's actually completely spherical, the structure behind. You have a portico and a Rotunda. That Rotunda was even more hidden in the past, because what you had were colonnaded porticos on either side that converged upon the sides of the building that hid the round behind. So actually, when you enter the building, when you cross from the portico into what was the sanctuary then, into what is now the name of the church, and we'll talk about that, you were shocked at the fact that it's entirely spherical on the inside. It's about 46 meters across and 46 meters high. In fact, it creates a perfect circle, a perfect sphere inside when you go inside. Inside the structure, inside the Pantheon, you'll see geometric designs of circles and squares everywhere. It is a testament to the Roman approach or the Roman appreciation coming out of Neo-Pythagoreanism for geometry, for perfection in symmetrical design. Okay. Very briefly, you see another triumphal arch there, don't you, in the facade of the Rotunda. Can you see it? Yeah. The two apses and central apse with a coffered underside of the rounded arch there, which is being supported by the Corinthian capitals. Okay. Are the tickets available, Renee?
Yeah, they're €5 each. Okay. Do we want to go and do that?
I think so. Let's continue from the inside and talk about it as a church, and you'll be stunned or maybe a few more things as you go inside the church. Sure, thanks Renee. As you enter into the structure, you have to keep in mind that it was a temple dedicated to the Roman Pantheon for around about 600 years or so. But pagan worship declined for a period of centuries after Constantine the Great conquered the city in the early 300s. In around about the year 608, do you remember we were in the Forum the other day? Remember I showed you the very last monument to be placed in the Forum, the column of Phocas, the Byzantine emperor from Constantinople. The Byzantine emperor of Constantinople gave, because he's in Constantinople, but he owns Rome technically. He gave this building over to Pope Boniface the third or fourth. And Pope Boniface rededicated it as a church to Mary and the Martyrs, Sancta Maria ad Martyres, Mary and the Martyrs, in order to, according to a contemporary source from the time, cleanse it from its pagan filth. That's the way that they described it. They removed all of the statues of the gods that were there and incorporated thousands of bits of relics, bones of the martyrs and saints taken from the Christian catacombs. And we've been to the catacombs, so you can see how all of this comes together. And those relics of the martyrs from the Christian catacombs were interred in a porphyry basin, porphyry being that durable purple material that we encountered in the Forum, at the very base of what would become the holy altar area, which is directly in front of us under the main apse of the church. Okay, when we enter the building, you're going to be hit by a few things. The first is the fact that there are rounded arches surrounding the building. The alcoves were there for the placing of statues dedicated to the gods, but since then you'll see that Raphael, the famous painter, is buried in one of them, and they're dedicated to various saints. The Mother of God is of course in the center because the church is dedicated to her. It's still a functioning church today. The icon of the Mother of God there is called I Odiitria, she who leads the way, and was gifted to Pope Boniface by the Emperor Phocas when he gave the church to Pope Boniface in the early 600s. Okay, that's the original right up there. It's a 1400-year-old image of the Mother of God. You might see a copy that they bring out and show on the right-hand side of the church as we enter. Above the main section, you will see the architrave going all the way around with windows in it. Okay, like the windows that we saw in the facade of the Trevi Fountain. So these are much older, okay? They're fake windows, they're false windows. They've got a pediment on top, two side bits that look like a column, and marble. And above that is the floating ceiling. Why is it floating? You'll see that the coffering, which is the indented squares that were used in order to construct the ceiling so it wasn't too heavy, it didn't collapse on itself. The coffering is offset from those false windows to give the impression that it's rotating, that the dome is rotating. At the very top there is a giant eye or oculus which gets the sun and moves around those false windows, that area, at different times of the day, so you could tell the time. That aperture in the roof, the oculus, also functioned in a similar way to the Temple of the Vestal Virgins in the Roman Forum, where the smoke billowing through the aperture in the roof facilitated a correspondence between heaven and earth. Here it's the sun doing that. That's what the pagans used it for. You bring in the sun god that way. The Christians kept it, of course, but they didn't see that imagery there. It has to do with divine illumination, the divine light, and so on and so forth. A few final notes in relation to how they managed to build this thing and keep it up. Concrete within scaffolding in order to create the rotunda. This design of temples, which is basically columns and architraves, columns and lintels, right, can only create square or rectangular structures. In order to create a circular structure, you need concrete which is durable and flexible. You pour it into a wooden scaffolding in order to create a perfect sphere, okay? And in order to reinforce the concrete so that it didn't collapse and fall apart, they included tufa, the material from the catacombs, which is easy to dig out, which means it's malleable, and also pumice, volcanic ash, which was included within the concrete to create the circular design of the building. The scaffolding, which was much more intricate for the dome, but they pulled it off. They pulled it off perfectly. It's never collapsed. So you've got that coffering, which makes it lighter and gives it a kind of sense that the weight won't have it collapse. And that was kind of scaffolded and ribbed in a square way all the way around with the aperture in the roof so that the center wouldn't collapse all the way through. So there's a practical reason for the oculus as well. Okay, since the 7th century, a church, that's what preserved it, that's what kept it alive. All right, do you have any questions or comments? I'm going to hold them, maybe there are questions or comments. About the Pantheon? Yeah.
I think like in one of the reading it mentioned that this is one of like a special church, like a special Marian church because of the dome shape.
What did it say? Because of the dome shape?
Like it's similar to like how the churches in the Eastern.
Yeah, every Eastern church in Byzantine tradition is a circular. It doesn't dedicate to Mary.
Yeah. It's not just Marian churches in Byzantium. So the dome churches, they come later on. The first, so you got the Pantheon and a few other circular buildings like the Vestal Virgins and so on and so forth. Then Constantine comes along. He Christianizes Rome and he establishes his capital at Constantinople. In Constantinople and in Rome, he's building rectangular basilicas. In between Constantine's reign and the reign of the Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, in Constantinople, you have monumental church design moving beyond the basilica to the domed cross in square church or cruciform church with a dome in the center and domes on each arm of the cross. The dome symbolizing the universe. And the Byzantines in Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Christians, they got that idea from buildings like the Pantheon. And eventually within those domes you'd have Christ depicted as in the center to underscore the belief that he is the master of the cosmos at the center of the dome, which symbolizes the universe. You will find Byzantine-like churches in that style in Venice, in Milan. The Duomo in Milan is Byzantine with an aperture in the roof. It combines insights from the Pantheon and whatever was current in Constantinople at the time. So because most of the churches from Byzantium, from Constantinople don't survive, you have to come here to Italy to see what they look like, and Venice is the place to go, and Ravenna to a lesser extent. Okay, so that's that connection. Is it specifically to Mary? No. In Byzantine and Orthodox churches, Mary is always in the apse. She's never really in the dome. So I don't know what that article was saying. Maybe I missed that nuance. Okay.
What happens to the rain?
Falls right through. You'll see there's a drain at the bottom if we go in. Yeah. All good? Thanks.
So that icon on top of the altar is the original?
Yep, early 7th century. Salus, no, that's not Salus Poppy, it's Odiyitria, she who leads the way. Yeah, that one. The design of the Pantheon, of course, would be imitated throughout the world. Look at that coffered ceiling, the grand oculus in the center. It's just phenomenal. Here, you've got the Corinthian capitals on top of the columns supporting the ground floor of the structure.
Sí, en Pomarco,
The false windows in the second tier, the drum,
en el Rivadumia, en el polígono.
which is keeping up the dome that seems to be floating in midair. There is the apse, Christianized, given crosses, and underneath that the central altar area, the sanctuary, with the icon of the Mother of God, she who leads the way from Constantinople, given by the Emperor Baghos to Boniface, Pope Boniface. And Raphael Santi is buried just over there. It's made out of, okay? You have the ground floor with the Corinthian capitals, fluted columns, very elegant again, like a lady's dress, all right? The fluted columns supporting an architrave and entablature that's keeping up what we call the drum. The drum has the false windows inserted into it. And do you notice they are offset, deliberately offset, because you think you'd make the pediment of those false windows completely in line with the dome. But they offset it deliberately so it looks like the dome is rotating, right? Do you see? They're not entirely symmetrical. Well, the impression that the dome is rotating is given further when the sun comes through and starts to make its way around. It kind of intersects both the lower part of the dome and the drum itself. Right, and it goes around. If you want to know where the famous Renaissance painter Raphael is buried, he's over there under a statue of the Mother of God holding the Christ child. So there's Mary again, but the most important image of Mary in this church is inserted in that recess in the wall there, right above the holy altar area where the Eucharist is consecrated. The apse, that's probably where the emperor would sit originally, Hadrian. You can see visitors right there, and each of the alcoves, you see again the columns holding up an architrave and a pediment. That's where the gods were found. Now, which gods they were, well, we've lost that information. Okay, but Hadrian would sit in the center as a god king on earth, receiving visitors, right? He's been totally overthrown. Mary has taken his place as the mother of the Son of God. And the icon, she who leads the way, is a Byzantine one that is set there above the place where the Eucharist, the body and blood of her Son, is consecrated and given to the faithful as they worship in here.